makes a sound. How you keeping?
And then you.
Yeah.
When last have you been to Swaziland?
Oh no, I haven't been since we were there. Yeah.
Otherwise, keeping well.
Busy. It's been hectic. I got out here yesterday at about 10:15.
Yeah, we do.
We're looking forward to a long preserved
That's only That's not the best. Just to visit those for a change.
Enjoy it. Honorable members, can we have a moment of silence? May we be seated. The Secretary will read the first order of the day.
Debate on vote number 8, Women, Children and People with Disabilities Appropriation Bill.
The Honorable the Minister. Minister, you can use the podium.
Thank you. Malibongwe. Thank you very much, Chairperson, Honorable Chair of the Committee, Honorable Memela, Honorable Members of Parliament, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Today I stand before you to present Budget Vote 8 as the Minister in the Presidency responsible for women. We are tabling this budget during the transitional period between the 4th and the 5th ANC-led administration. Let me take this opportunity to pay my respect to the family of one of the illustrious daughter of our soil, the Deputy President of the ANC Women's League, one of our own, Ms. Nosipho Ntwanambi, who passed on Tuesday, July the 8th. May his soul rest in peace. She was a stalwart dedicated to the empowerment and emancipation of women. Hers was a life lived in sacrifice, and she has left us with a rich legacy to follow. We will pick up the baton and continue where she has left off. Chairperson, on July 3, President Jacob Zuma signed a proclamation establishing the Department of Women located in the presidency, reaffirming the country's commitment to the Beijing Platform for Action. This is a positive step in enhancing the department's role to lead, coordinate and oversee the transformation agenda on women's socioeconomic empowerment, rights and equality through mainstreaming, monitoring and evaluation. We are currently engaged in a reconfiguration process to transfer the functions and responsibilities related to the programs for the rights of people with disability and children's rights to the Department of Social Development as pronounced by the President on May 25. A joint task team has been established to expedite transition, guided by the Presidency and the Department of Public Service and Administration. At the departmental level, this has necessitated a strategic realignment and restructuring exercise. We are reviewing all programs, taking stock of the human capital and financial needs to move the women's agenda forward. In addition, we will be reviewing the status, role, location, and sustainability of the National Council Against Gender-Based Violence, so as to strengthen efforts towards the elimination of gender-based violence in our society. As such, by the end of this month, we will be undertaking our first departmental strategic planning session as the Department of Women in the Presidency to develop a 5-year strategic plan of 2015 to 2020. We are not departing from an unknown plane. There has been work done before us. Ours is to build forward. Mindful of the foundation already laid, let me therefore take this opportunity to reflect on some of the commitments that were made in the previous budget by my predecessor, former Minister Lulu Kungwane. The department committed to advocate that more land be allocated to women by Department of Rural Development and Land Reform. We thus welcome the reopening of the land claim processes, and we will be monitoring how women benefit from it. We also welcome the Department of Rural Development and Land Reform's final policy proposals on strengthening the relative rights of people working the land. As the Department of Women, we will submit inputs that will ensure that women working on farms, those that reside in farms, and women who are married to farm workers benefit from this process. We had committed to finalizing the Women Empowerment and Gender Equality Bill. The bill was tagged as Section 76 and went through the National Assembly process and was approved and referred to for concurrence to the NCOP. Further amendments were made by the NCOP. However, due to the rise of Parliament for the end of the 4th administration, it lapsed. We therefore intend to further consult and review this bill. May I also emphasize, this is a new process. As we all know, rules of Parliament at the end of any session, the bill lapses. So we are in the new process of review, and we will welcome all those who want to participate in this process. We also intend through communication to ensure that the review process is an inclusive one and takes into consideration the multiplicity of views. We had also committed to submit reports on the rights of children to the AU and the United Nations, and Cabinet had approved the following reports for depositing. The combined fourth report on the United Nations Convention on the Right of the Child, the optional protocol on the sale of children, child prostitution, and child pornography, the African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of Children. 2014 will see the popularization of the National Plan of Action for Children, as well as the domestication of international and regional conventions. The National Disability Rights Policy, which strives to address poverty and inequality experienced by persons with disabilities in a systematic process that places the responsibility for removing access and participation barriers on duty barriers, will be finalized this financial year. As we know that the Department of Social Development will also form as part of their mandate, take over the responsibilities and functions pertaining to the rights of children and persons with disabilities. We have also signed and ratified international and regional instruments such as CEDAW, the MDGs, Beijing Platform for Action, the AU Protocol, and the SADC Gender Protocol. The department has undertaken reporting on the progress made in the country on the implementation of the Beijing Platform for Action and CEDAW. The Beijing Beijing Plus 20 report will focus on the country's progress to date on the implementation of the critical areas that include access to education in technical fields, access to health services, participation in the peacekeeping mission, increased level of participation in political spheres and increased appointments and participation of women in the judiciary. Most of these achievements have been made possible by the consistent political will and progressive legislative reforms for the rights and empowerment of women, the advancement of the girl child and gender equality. The CEDAW report will assess the extent to which South Africa has successfully implemented the range of provisions of the Convention, including progress on the adoption of legislative enactments regarding the criminalization of certain sexual offenses, equality, and children, as well as government policies, programs and plans of action to promote gender equality and eliminate discrimination against women. The report will also indicate progress made on the multi-sectoral interministerial action plan to combat violence against women and the adoption of comprehensive measures to better address such violence. In addition, the report will reflect on measures to address violence, such as the prevention of violence campaign and public awareness of the fact that all forms of violence against women are in violation of women's rights. The country represented by former Minister of Department of of Women, Children, and People with Disabilities in March participated in a successful 58th session of the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women in New York. We reached agreement conclusions that are holistic and transformative, that include the standalone goal on gender equality and the mainstreaming of gender in all other future goals in the post-2015 development agenda. We therefore have a clear mandate from the women of Africa and the women of the world in terms of the report to the heads of states when they meet in September to deliberate on the post-2015 developmental agenda. We will also report that through the GRB framework, the country will ensure the necessary budgetary allocations for the implementation of projects and programs, including socioeconomic empowerment and overall gender mainstreaming. Chairperson, this budget vote seeks to consolidate the gains made in the previous term of office whilst also setting a firm foundation for the future with regard to women's empowerment and gender equality. The overall budget for the financial year is 198,300,000 rand. I read it right, which includes the 63 million rand allocated for the Commission for Gender Equality. This budget, continues to pose limitation in fulfilling the mandate of this department. The reorganization will therefore create an opportunity for adequate resourcing. Whilst we acknowledge with great pride the strides made in the past 20 years towards women empowerment and gender equality, we have to contend with the unsettling reality of high unemployment, poverty, and inequalities that continues to challenge women in their various experiences. The removal of the persisting barriers to the advancement of women, many of which are systematic, structural inequalities that are patriarchal in nature, remains a critical condition to achieving women empowerment and gender equality. It is therefore imperative, as the President outlined in his State of the Nation address in June, that as we enter the second phase of our transition from apartheid to a national democratic society, we embark on a radical socio-economic transformation to push back the triple challenges of unemployment, inequality, and poverty. Therefore, the aim of the Department of Women is to lead, coordinate, and oversee the transformation agenda on women's socio-economic empowerment, rights and equality through mainstreaming, advocacy, monitoring, and evaluation. In the next 5 years, the priority of the ministry in the presidency will be responsible for, this is new. In the presidency, responsible for women will be to ensure that women's socio-economic empowerment and women's rights are mainstreamed across all sectors of society through monitoring the extent to which social and economic circumstances of women are significantly improved, promoting, advocating for and monitoring women's empowerment and gender equality, promoting the understanding of differential circumstances of women and men in society and the impact of seemingly neutral decisions, plan, laws, policies, and practices on either gender through capacity building, on gender mainstreaming and responsive gender budgeting. Facilitate and monitoring capacity building and skills development for women to participate meaningfully in all areas of the economy and the workplace. Standardizing and regularizing of accountability with regard to the implementation of gender mainstreaming by both public and private sector. The mainstreaming will anchor on the following pillars. Monitoring and evaluation. The department will play an oversight role by introducing monitoring and evaluation tools to keep not only the government but the private sector accountable when it comes to the mainstreaming of gender. The department will work closely with the Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation to align our monitoring and evaluation mechanisms to ensure harmonization of our systems. We'll pursue a strong research agenda to allow us to look at gaps which resulted in women not benefited as anticipated. The research findings will allow the department to make the necessary interventions. When it comes to gender-responsive budget, the gender-responsive budgeting is one of the enabling tools to the mainstream of gender. A radical change is needed to ensure that all parties in the public service and private sectors, including NGOs, implement the gender-responsive budgeting in all their planning, programs, budgeting, and expenditure processes. Chairperson, lest we forget, this year marks the 60th anniversary of the 1954 Women's Charter, which preceded the Freedom Charter of 1955. A clear indication that women in their own rights were pioneers in the struggle for liberation. The 1954 Women's Charter together with the Freedom Charter of 1955, influenced and anchored the fundamentals of the 1996 Constitution of the Republic of South Africa. It further informed the development of and influenced the 1994 Women's Charter for Effective Equality. Some of the women in this parliament played a role, and some are still here in making sure we realize this dream. The Women's Charter called for the enfranchisement of men and women of all races, the right to vote and be elected to all state bodies, the right to full opportunities for employment with equal pay and possibilities of promotion in all spheres of work, equal pay for equal work. Most of us, we can see the posters and the pictures of the women marching also in 1956 on equal pay for equal work. Equal rights in relation to property, land rights, marriage and children, and the removal of all laws and customs that denied women such equality, amongst others. For the first time, both black men and women voted in the historical general election of 27 April 1994. All races voted as equals before the law. The dreams of women like Charlotte Manye Maxeke were realized. They must have ululated in their graves as the ones of the aims of Women's Charter in 1954 was realized. This path was carved over 100 years ago by the endless sacrifices and courageous struggle displayed by heroic stalwarts who are embodied of 102 years of a relentless forward marching for the total emancipation from all forms of discrimination. Unarmed and defenseless, they challenged the might and the brutality of successive oppressive regimes in order to ensure that future generations live in a South Africa that truly belongs to all, both black and white. Once more, in 2013, we commemorated the centenary of 1913 Women's March, led by Charlotte Manye Maxeke, against the introduction of pass law and the infamous 1913 Native Land Act. We also have to bear in mind that while celebrating 60 years of the Women's Charter in 2016, we will also further celebrate 60 years of the 1956 Women's March to the Union Building under the heroic leaders of Lillian Ngoyi, Helen Joseph, Sophie de Bruyn, Rahima Musa, and many others. It is therefore against this backdrop that we will be celebrating the 2014 Women's Month under the theme, celebrating the 60th anniversary of the Women's Charter and 20 years of freedom, moving women's agenda forward. We will therefore elaborate on the program for the National Women's Month on the 31st July, when we brief the nation of the plans for this year. Chairperson, other significant milestone we need to build on as we together move South Africa women's forward include key legislative frameworks such as the Employment Equity Act of 1998, Promotion of Equality and Prevention of Unfair Discrimination of 2000. These are some of the laws which are part of the progress we have made so far. The post-1994 visible representation of women in as public representatives, both in the country and at international level, that has risen significantly. For example, currently, there is 41% representation of women in this parliament, 43% of cabinet ministers, and 46% of women deputy minister. We are on track. Women now have increased access to participate in sectors that were previously male-dominated, such as the judiciary. Whilst we might not be happy, we are on track. Defense, engineering, finance, and commercial fields, amongst others. It is with heavy hearts, Chairperson, today, although with great determination, that we will, for the first time, since the inception of the Mandela Day, be volunteering our service in recognition of his selflessness without our father, Utata Umadiba. May his soul rest in peace. In line with the 2014 Mandela Day theme and the call by the President to take pride in our country and clean South Africa, this department has identified 2 projects. On Friday, we'll spend our 67 minutes of service at Potter's House for Women and Children and the Riboningo Care Center in the city of Tshwane. Over and above cleaning, we will initiate legacy projects at the 2 centers, which will go a long way in empowering women and the young women with the basic skills that will enable them to be economically active. In conclusion, Chairperson, we will, during this term, strive to ensure that women are lifted from a status of victims to victors. We are committed to work with all stakeholders to bring about the desired change and make true of the saying that nothing about women without women. As women take center stage in shaping their own future, the course ahead of us dictates that we must not shy away from being unpopular, as this might be inevitable, especially since we will be more visible from an oversight perspective. The responsibility we have been charged with demands that we be firm and resolute in ensuring that women are major beneficiaries of an intervention in the second phase of our transition. Chairperson, may I take this opportunity to thank my Director General, Ms. Veliswa Paduza, of the Department of Women in the Presidency, and her team for their sterling work they have done in ensuring that we are well prepared for this budget, especially me, being a new child on the block. I take this opportunity to solicit support from all colleagues in this House to support our budget. Ngilebogile. Ngiyabonga.
Sibonga kakhulu lungehluniphekile Makela Shabangu. Ngitawucela nyalo lilonga lehluniphekile sihlalo welkomiti labo make memela etengaphambili.
Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Minister Shabangu, Honorable Members of Parliament, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. The proclamation by President Jacob Zuma elevating women's issues into the presidency heralds a new dispensation that will see the mainstreaming of women into government business. This enables the Department of Women in the Presidency to exercise its oversight role and to effectively monitor and evaluate the mainstreaming of the gender and the empowerment of women across all sectors of society. Chairperson, a lot has been done in the 20 years of freedom to create an enabling environment through legislative reform. Legalized injustices against women generally, and especially those women at the intersection of race and gender, has virtually disappeared. This includes all laws and formal policies that precluded women from entering any occupation or profession of their choice, owning property or land, and engaging in any business venture. However, the social patterns of exclusions and disadvantages that women experienced in the past remain a systematic feature of the South African social and economic landscape. The whole world remains patriarchal, with men dominating all aspects of life, from the family to politics, business, and workplace. Women today continue to face the triple challenge of poverty, unemployment, and inequality. This is a reality that cannot be ignored by the judiciary when adjudicating, and Chairperson, this year marks the 60th anniversary of the 1954 Women's Charter and the 20th anniversary of the 1994 Women's Charter for Effective Equality. The 8 aims outlined in the Women's Charter of 1954 forms the foundation to the 12 articles contained in the Women's Charter for Effective Equality of 1994. This is significant because the Women's Charter for Effective Equality coincides with the dawn of democracy in South Africa. Thus serves as an appropriate tool to measure progress made on achieving the aims of the Women's Charter in 1954 and the 20th year of freedom. Chairperson, it is 2 months since the historic 5th democratic national elections. The electorate constituted by women in the majority gave thumbs up to the African National Congress 2014 election manifesto and has once again mandated the ANC-led government to work side by side with all South Africans as we together move the women's agenda forward in the next 5 years. This is a mandate we do not take lightly. Women must take center stage as we march on to the second phase of our transition to realize emancipation from all discriminations. And I plead with each and every woman in this august house, irrespective of the color, creed, that let's remember we are the center pole of a nation. We are the salt of the earth. Without women, there's nothing. Thank you.
Siyabonga lunga elihloniphekile. I'll now call Honorable Robinson.
Honourable Chair, Minister, colleagues and guests. Congratulations, Minister Shabangu, on your appointment to the Ministry for Women, a challenging position, as this ministry has achieved very little during the past 5 years. Some might say you've been handed a poisoned chalice because of the problems of poor leadership, irregular and wasteful expenditure. Many of the public clearly remember the large amounts of money spent on entertainment, lavish furniture, motor vehicles, and travel, and not on the vulnerable members of our society who are most in need of support and help. On behalf of the Democratic Alliance, I wish you well in your term of office and trust that you will be able to make a positive impact in this ministry, which has been beset by many challenges. We need action, not empty words, to improve the status of women, especially those in rural areas who are so often forgotten and neglected. The DA will support your endeavours relating to the mandate, provided we put service to the nation and to women first. We are privileged to be representing and serving the people, especially the women of South Africa, and we are duty-bound to make a difference in the lives of women and future generations. In the words of the President, the objectives of the new ministry will be to champion the achievement of women's socio-economic empowerment and women's rights. It's also to strengthen and ensure the effectiveness of the national gender machinery. If the ministry is serious about upholding this objective, it will strengthen oversight and the transversal function of the Women's Ministry and coordinate monitoring and reporting functions with the National Planning Commission on Monitoring and Evaluation and the DPSA. The Women's Ministry must be streamlined to function within an outcomes-based approach and align the outcomes to those that unlock funding from National Treasury, but not for jamborees. A more focused mandate for the new ministry will advance women's economic empowerment and development in the country. It is vital that women become part of the economy so that they are no longer dependent on their husbands or partners in an unequal position. Women must be afforded the same opportunities to create an independent lifestyle and contribute to families' income. As the largest part of the ministry's budget has been allocated to the Commission for Gender Equality, a Chapter 9 institution of vital importance, I will focus on some aspects of its work. Unfortunately, the budget of the CGE happens to be the smallest of all the Chapter 9 institutions. As an institution with such a vital role in our country, this begs the question, how seriously does government take the CGE if it's not properly funded? We sincerely hope that more funds will be allocated in an effort to correct gender inequality in South Africa. One of the strategic objects of the CGE is to facilitate and coordinate the eradication of gender-based violence and promote women's empowerment. The harsh patriarchal attitudes and demeaning gender stereotyping that are seen are deeply destructive and cause great social problems. Intolerance of alternate sexual orientation needs to be eradicated. Too many lesbian women still die due to corrective rape being carried out by those who wish to impose their bigoted attitudes on others and force them to change their sexual orientation. Corrective rape, at its core, is due to the continuing disparagement of women in South African society. This ministry should first seek to improve the views and treatment of women in the country if rape of any kind is going to be eradicated. The CGE also monitors and evaluates the implementation of policies and programs of state and civil society that could affect gender inequality. It engages in advocacy programs aimed at raising awareness and challenging patriarchal stereotypes, and also promotes gender mainstreaming and gender equality. These ideals need to be further implemented in our country, as the current statistics on rape and domestic violence make it clear that none of these initiatives have made much impact on the existing prejudices women still experience. The ministry and portfolio committees can achieve a lot more to assist vulnerable women by interacting more and collaborating with one another and the CGE. An issue that needs serious attention is the funding of shelters and safe houses for women, abused women and children. They play an important role in combating domestic violence by providing shelter and giving victims the opportunity to re-establish and equip themselves with skills that will help them to become self-sufficient and able to provide for themselves when they leave the shelter. It is vital that government reconsiders its funding model for such institutions, which are mainly run by NGOs and faith-based organizations. Many of them are facing financial crisis, and many traumatized women and their children are turned away because there are no beds available in the shelters. They either have to return to the home of the perpetrator and suffer retribution and face more abuse, or seek refuge on the streets. Shelters are found mainly in the towns, not in rural areas. So what alternatives do those vulnerable people have? There are only 30 multi-purpose Tutuzela centers throughout the country. Their multidisciplinary approach achieves good results, but many more centers are needed to cope with the needs of our women. This is a challenge that government needs to resolve urgently. Child maintenance is another multifaceted problem that needs urgent attention. More than 9 million children in South Africa grow up without financial or parental support. This may be due to an inability or unwillingness to pay. Some defaulters deliberately deceive or play the system, pretending that they have no funds. This needs to be eliminated by proper investigations conducted by staff who are highly trained and efficient. Unfortunately, most maintenance courts, like the magistrates' courts, have huge backlogs due to staff shortages. So many people have to spend long hours at court awaiting their appointments. People are frequently turned away, and they have to return again and again, losing yet another day's pay or leave. Some of the staff, investigators, prosecutors, and magistrates need additional training to skill them in this particular facet of the law. More social workers are needed to counsel the affected families, for whom this can be a terrible hardship, leaving many emotional scars. The entire maintenance system needs to be overhauled so that they become efficient and justice can be dispensed without delay. We in the DA call upon parents to take responsibility for the children that they have brought into the world. If you make a baby, you need to take care of it for the rest of your life. Alternatively, use birth control measures, which are freely available, and don't burden yourself with an unwanted child. Children go through these trials and traumas, often become delinquents or get involved with drugs and alcohol, which later leads to a life of poverty without any prospects. The DA Women's Network has proposed that maintenance defaulters should face the full might of the law, and they should be blacklisted by credit regulators and have their credit worthiness limited, as happens if they don't pay their other debts. We will be in consultation with the Department of Justice and also with the Department of Social Development to take these needs and positive proposals forward. More maintenance investigators and maintenance officers need to be trained and deployed in order to ease the backlog in the system. When the National Council Against Gender-Based Violence was established in 2012, there were great expectations amongst gender activists, as it was to be led by former Deputy President Katlemo Motlanthe. It seemed to signal high-level political commitment to dealing with the escalating sexual abuse and violence, despite the many policies, strategies, plans, and programs which aimed to combat violence against women. It was to be a multi-sectoral body bringing together stakeholders from government, business, labor, civil society to develop a common national approach to combating the high prevalence of sexual and domestic violence. Sadly, power hunger and territorialism made this body ineffective. Violence seems to have become socially normalized and legitimized, and there's a culture of silence and impunity surrounding perpetrators. This silence must be broken. People must be encouraged to speak out. Perpetrators must not be protected. The mindset of our society that has itself been violated needs to be addressed through programs to re-establish positive values and reinforce the human rights-based constitutional values. Positive values must be taught through life skills programs at schools, educare centers, clinics, churches, and other organizations. Cooperation with SAPS and the judiciary must be encouraged so that the low levels of prosecution and convictions can be improved. Support from social services is inadequate. There are not sufficient social workers due to inadequate funding from government. We must lobby and influence government to increase funding to bolster and strengthen support structures for families that are suffering and are under pressure, and also the single and the child-headed households. A study conducted by the South African Medical Research Council in 2009 found that more than 56% of all murders of women were perpetrated by intimate partners, making femicide the leading cause of death for women. It is shocking to know that this occurs at a rate 6 times higher than that of the global average. All responsible and caring people must strive to put the effects of our troubled past behind us, to heal the wounds and scars that still exist through positive influences so that restoration can take place. Let this new Ministry for Women act as a catalyst for action on the ground to transform the lives of women, affording them human dignity, equality, and freedom from gender-based violence and stereotypes, freeing them from prejudice and outmoded, harmful cultural practices. Let us create a society in which all people are given the opportunity to reach their full potential as citizens of a free and democratic South Africa. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Honourable Member Ian Lowe.
Thank you, Chairperson. The EFF will not support the budget vote based on the following observations. Don't get excited now. Firstly, 300 years of colonial and apartheid South Africa had the most severe impact on black women. Yet 20 years in democracy, ANC's good story, black women issues still have not been made priority. There have been no clear vision, strategy for the emancipation of women, especially black women. On a structural level, 20 years, black women still suffer triple oppression and exploitation based on their gender, race, and class. All efforts made by this government have been made on a superficial level and have simply been the means of window dressing. These have been also helped to continuously moving women's issues from ministry to ministry. We do not support this budget because it does not strongly promote economic freedom of women. As the emancipation of women as in equal counterparts in society no longer rest on passing more legislation only. It rests on economic self-efficiency that allows women to participate in the direction and redirection of the means, safety, security, and as well as production. The ANC government tends to negate the responsibility of women empowerment to Ministry of Women only. As EFF, we propose that all government departments should have a women empowerment desk and women issues should not be isolated. Furthermore, this committee must tell us how it intends to make sure that all...
1 minute. Honorable members who are our guests, you can appreciate, but you are not supposed to participate in the debate. You are not supposed to clap. You are not supposed to also howl or heckle, but you can just sit quietly and listen through to the debate. Over to you, Honourable Member.
Thank you. Furthermore, this committee must tell us how it intends to make sure that all departments have clear programs that promote women empowerment, short-term, medium-term, and long-term plans, and its monitoring mechanisms. The South African corporate sector continues to be a boys' club only, men-dominated with barriers to entry. Female CEOs, MDs make up 4.4%, chairpersons 5.5%, directorships 15.8%, and executive directors 21.6%. Therefore, no clear strategy on ways that the ministry will be disciplined, that the private sector and open up access to women, especially black women. Government are continuing giving condoms for free. As sex is a choice, why can we not give sanitary pads also for free? As girls ages of 12 and 18 years are living below the poverty line in South Africa that cannot afford sanitary pads. As a result, these young girls miss approximately 5 days of school per month, which amounts to 60 days schools per year. Why isn't this made priority in the budget? This budget fails to speak to 34 widows in Marikana whose husbands were massacred by the state police under the ANC government. Those women are now struggling to support their children. The husbands of those 34 women in Marikana didn't die of natural death. They were killed because they were demanding a living wage of 12.5 12.5 thousand rand in order to support their families. They didn't want a Mercedes-Benz or a BMW. South Africa ranks 90 out of 148 countries in the Gender Equality Index, which, largely based on political participation of women, our country is often praised for the 41.1% of parliamentarian seats held by women. However, what have been the...
Honourable Member, your time is up. Thank you very much, Honourable L. van der Merwe.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chairperson, the Honourable Minister, the Honourable Chairperson of our committee, MPs, our guests in the gallery, you're all greeted. Let me also take this opportunity to, on behalf of the IFP, to convey our condolences to the ANC on the passing of the Deputy Chairperson of the ANC Women's League. May her soul rest in peace. I rise this morning on behalf of the women in my party, as well as South Africa's women at large, who are ready to take South Africa into its next phase of its democracy, where we no longer look at just how far we have come, but what must be done to take our freedoms further. We must therefore this morning do a full post-mortem of the defunct department to learn lessons from the past and to ensure that we don't make the same mistakes in future. We must therefore start by asking whether this department has got a good story to tell in terms of the legacy of this department. I would say yes, because good work has been done, but no, because a dissolvement of the department speaks to a need to take women's empowerment to a more radical progress. Since its inception, the department was under scrutiny. Its leader seemed autocratic in her nature and allergic to any input or criticism from this side of the House, as if we, the MPs on this side of the House, has no stake in the future of our country. Honourable Minister, that must change. We are stronger together. It remains also an indictment on the Portfolio Committee that some MPs abetted the former minister's efforts to block discussions on the Fluxman report, which highlighted mismanagement and corruption in the department. It's therefore unsurprising that at times its turnaround strategy misfired. And despite a critical skills shortage, the skills audit remained elusive. Moreover, the department's budget of 198 million was wholly inadequate for the task it faced. While the IFP decried the lack of funding, we also decried the manner in which it was utilized at times. The bulk of this department's money going to administration, leaving very little for the core programs to work with. These are lessons to be learned. We need more money for this department. During the past year, the bulk of the budget was also set aside for the Women's Empowerment and Gender Equity Bill, which the former minister argued to be the panacea for women's empowerment. Yet many of us argued that women's empowerment does not happen in boardrooms, but it happens at grassroots level. And we are therefore pleased to hear that Cabinet has realized that the bill has got serious shortcomings. And in fact, Minister, I've prepared a document, a lengthy one, which I'll make available with some of the suggestions, which I can forward to your office. And also it's important that legislation with regards to women's empowerment happens in very close consultation with the CGE. That's very important. We can't leave them out. They're very important partners in this process. Honourable Minister, you don't have a budget yet which we can scrutinize, but I must commend you for you seem committed to usher in a new era of radical progress for our women. But we must acknowledge that too many challenges remain. The inexcusable abuse of our women, our children, and especially our elderly. The plight of our women, especially those with disabilities, who remains on the fringes of our economy and our society, and the plight of young women whose interests aren't served by the NYDA. These are not political issues, Minister. These are issues we all face. I was raised by a single mother who at times struggled to put food on the table. When as a young woman I could not access funding to study, I faced the reality many young women face today. The struggles of the vast majority of our women are my struggles too. Honourable Minister, I look forward to partnering with you on this journey to bring real change in the lives of South Africa's women. It is indeed time for a new era. The IFP will support your budget vote.
Thank you, Honourable van der Merwe. Honourable Tseke.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson, and good morning, everyone. Honorable Minister, the Chairperson of the committee, members of the committee, members of Parliament, and the guests in the gallery. Allow me to start with Honorable Law, which has spoken on behalf of the EFF. I must say that, Honorable Member, you are also invited to come and participate in our committee because it is for the first time that we see you in this podium debating on issues of women. I must say you are invited because actually in the committee you sent a member of Parliament. I don't remember the surname of that lady, but she has been so quiet since the first day of our debates. So you come here to be the spokesperson of that lady. I must say you are invited too. And it's a shame too because as the ANC, we have a good story to tell, yes, and you are a good story to tell you yourself because we have given you an opportunity to come and present. This is the ANC government that has given you an opportunity to come and be a member of Parliament here and present in front of the people. Because previously, before 1994, this Parliament consisted of dominantly, it was consisting of male people. So this is a good story to. I'm proud because it's a good story to tell about you. Definitely. Thank you very much, Chair. And Ntetle Mogaetsho ke leboge mo presidente wa naga re Jacob Zuma ka go tlhoma lefapha la bomme ka mo ofising ya gagwe se se netefatsa ebile se matlafatsa maikemisetso magolo a mokgatlho wa rona wa ANC wa gore re tla tsa boikarabelo ba gore tekatekano ya bomme le borre mo nageng ya rona ya lekana le go bona gore bomme ba fitlhela thuto e maleba ba fitlhela maemo a pholo a itekanetseng bomme ba fitlhela ditiro tse di siameng le gore ba gona go ikemela ka gonne ba tsaya karolo e kgolo mo nageng ya rona go ya ka the statistics South Africa female population exceed the male population by 7.1% and women made up 51.3% of the South African population. Ke ka mo botlhoka tiro le tlala di bonagalang thata mo go bomme ka gonne ke bona ba eteletseng pele malapa kwa pele. Ka Setswana sa etshorare ngaka mosadi moka o nya le mariga. Madi a ra fitisang gompieno ke a lefapha la bana le bomme a lefapha la pele la bomme bana le batho ba ba sa itekanang sentle mo mmeleng re le mokgatlho wa African National Congress re supporta this budget vote because we have a commitment that we have made to the people of South Africa.
Excuse me, Honorable Member. I've been notified that translation is not working. Oh, yes. Just to make people aware that we are looking at the problem.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Otherwise, this is an official language. Thank you, Honorable Chair. We have African National Congress supported this budget because we have a commitment that we have made to the people of South Africa. We have committed ourselves that we will push back the frontiers of poverty and improve the lives of our people. Honorable Robinson, let me share with you the good stories that this government has done because it seems as if you are only focusing on the negatives and forgetting that there are positives that this government have done. Honorable Chair, as we celebrate the 20 years of our democracy, we want to thank the African National Congress for the work well done in terms of gender equality. South Africa's progress with regard to gender equality is evident both in the international and the regional indices. On the Social Institution and Gender Index of the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, South Africa ranked the 4th out of 87 countries in the 2012 index and was the top-ranked country in Africa. On the SADC Gender and Development Index, South Africa ranked the 2nd in 2012, and on the World Economic Forum Gender Gap Index, South Africa has consistently remained in the upper levels, reaching 6th position. Wana lidisebe otla utlwa mara wana me wana le matlo otla bona gore naga ya rona ke naga e dirang. Together we move South Africa forward, and yes, South Africa is a better place to stay and to live in. Honorable Chairperson, there has been a steady progress since the advent of democracy in South Africa, where women are occupying positions of power in every corner of our society. This has come as a result of the impact of the programs of change and the attention paid in particular to those who occupy the lowest ranks on the apartheid social and economic ladder. We are building the National Democratic Society, a society in which women's oppressed will be a relic of the past. In order for the ANC to fully reverse this historical, social, and economic exclusion of women, it is dealing through programs, policy legislations with the creation of the material and cultural conditions that would allow for the full development of women. Honorable members, a high percentage of women undertake low skills and low wage employment. We agree on that point. Women primarily serve as a domestic labor and home-based caregivers. Women remain consistently underrepresented in high skills and high wage employment. Many women continue to operate in the informal trade sector, including the informal cross-border trade. Statistics shows that overall, fewer women are employed. As a result, poverty in our country is highly gendered. Female-headed households are generally much poorer than men and are more likely to live below 570 a month. This is especially the case in the rural areas where I'm coming from, and thus renders women more vulnerable to the food insecurity. Lack of employment opportunities in the absence of independent source of income means that many women are forced to rely on their spouses, immediate family members, relatives, or friends for survival. But I must say that the establishment and the success of small, medium, and micro enterprises, including survivalists and cooperatives, is globally recognized as critical to address the challenges of job creation, poverty alleviation, socio-economic conditions, and equality for all. This is especially the case in South Africa, where the role of SMMEs is vital to drive economic growth, employment, innovation, and competitiveness. It is estimated that South Africa has some 5.9 million SMMEs, which generate 40% of its GDP and 60% of employment in the country. Women enterprises are largely represented in the SMMEs. Our government has also implemented various approaches in supporting the SMMEs by putting measures to reduce tax compliance burden, providing dedicated credit facilities, establishing support and incubators, diversifying procurement towards emerging enterprises where possible. But I must say that, Honorable Minister, I think we must do a lot in this sector. We must be able to monitor the department that is responsible for this so that the women of this country must benefit. Honorable members, today we have the Small Enterprise Financing Agency, which is housed in the IDC. This was an initiated after the adoption of the new growth path in 2010, which identified enterprise development as a key priority. Small Enterprise Financing Agency's mandate is to foster the establishment, survival, and the growth of SMMEs and contributes towards poverty alleviation and job creation. In the Department of Trade and Industry too, we have Isivande Women's Fund, which is an exclusive fund that aims to accelerate women's economic empowerment by providing more affordable, usable, and responsive finance to women. This Women's Fund target formally registered 60% women-owned or managed enterprises that have been in existence and operating for 2 or more years, with a loan ranging from 30,000 to 2 million. We are also encouraging the women of this country to take heed of these opportunities created by the African National Congress. There's also a program called the Bavumile Skills Development Program, which is a women empowerment initiative aimed at enhancing talent in the arts, crafts, and textiles and clothing sector among women.
Honorable
It consists...
Member, thank you very much. Your time is up.
Oh, yes. Thank you very much.
I call upon Honorable Carter to take the podium.
Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you, and Minister. The advent of democracy gave women, children, and people with disabilities the hope that finally their situation as individuals would be improved. The department was meant to vigorously implement several acts, but instead it spent money and time on gatherings and speech making. The sad reality is that the department has failed our women, children, and people living with disabilities. Though, Honourable Minister, I have to say to you, I am throwing my speech one side because there is more urgent matters that also needs to be heard, and hopefully the ministry can now and the department can take this forward. The department was tasked with promoting a society free of violence and abuse against women, children, and people living with disabilities. If anything, the situation in respect of the above has deteriorated. Today, in our midst here, we've got a young mother with children who works at this institution that is the victim of continuous abuse and harassment. And this is a plea from her. Abusers such as rejected stalkers who have cases pending at court for stalking and harassment and the contravention of protection orders and who have been identified to have pre-existing psychiatric illnesses need to be sent by the courts for evaluation and assessment to identify the psychopathic deviances. According to a chief prosecutor at the Goodwood Court, Honourable Minister, magistrates view stalking and harassment as petty crime, and the sentencing often doesn't match the crime. The NPA is failing our women here. Abusers are given suspended sentences without any management of their actions thereafter. Minister, there can be a plea that those convicted of stalking and harassment who have been diagnosed as psychopathic should be forced to wear a GPS-enabled device so that they can be monitored and prevented from continuing the harassment and the stalking. We have seen how many women have lost their lives. It starts with the innocent harassment, but at the end of the day, they are murdered. And that is what the media talks about, when it is too late. A special police unit and a specialized court should be formed for domestic violence, stalking and harassment cases. Many are not equipped to understand the impact that stalking and harassment has on the victims, who are often left to manage their own situation due to the fact that it gets regarded as petty crime. Victims are in constant fear of what their stalker might do next, because no control measures have been put in place during sentencing. We've got here an example of the same case with video recordings in public, where every time he walks out of a court with a 500 Rand fine. We cannot continue having that. When the day she lost her life or the kids lost their lives, that is when it's going to be too late. The media portrays these stories of those who were stalked and were murdered, but not those of the survivors or those that are going through it every single day. There's a plea here for sufficient government-funded houses of safety. It will also ensure that those victims who are in this trap are able to get out and start a life, and not run around hiding with their children and uprooting their children all the time to run away from the harassment. Minister, we also need stricter maintenance implementation of the laws, not only to those young children, but also to wives that were loyal, and if I can use the horrible word, that were eventually traded in when they reach the age of 55, 60, 70, and they have given their whole life. We also need to have stricter control on that. We need to know less of report submissions, theories and projections. I thank you.
Your time has expired.
Thank you.
Honourable MP Chwewu, can you take the podium?
Honourable Chairperson, Honourable Minister, Honourable Chair of the Committee, I want to greet also members in the House, honourable members, but just to address a few things, that it is this government, the ANC, that has given women the right to to vote, the right to be in parliament, the right to be executives, CEOs of companies. There has never been a government in this country that has elevated women to the statue where we are at this point in time. And that is a positive move by this government. All of us need to accept it and promote it wherever we go. You know, I have a clipping here which I got from an analysis of Sunday Times, which analyzes the 1931 to 1956. It is a woman who came to Soweto, a white woman in the middle, surrounded by black women around her, showing them how to clean their houses, in white houses, to become good servants. You know, this woman had the bravery to go to a township which they were scared that they will be raped or whatever, but she was brave enough to go and implement an apartheid policy that oppresses other women. So where are these women who can go out and promote good policies of this new government that promotes women? Where are we as women? I mean, women of all races, we are all raped. We are discriminated against. Where are we when we are supposed to promote good policies? So the issue of sanitary pads, comrade, Honorable EFF member, sanitary pads are being distributed around all schools. Every school we distribute sanitary pads because we know that these kids have to attend schooling. It's not a new thing that we are talking about. And Honorable Robinson, you are saying that we must put our past behind us. I cannot do that. You know, Pavlov says in psychology that when you feed a dog every day, you know, at 9:30, you feed it. Even the day you come with an empty plate, the dog salvates. So it means that when you are brought up, you know, being, for an example, being racist, and that is not being removed from your mind, you still continue to be racist. That is why behavior, for you to remove behavior, it means that you must re-educate that particular person. So most of us that are grown-ups today still preserve the old, but you have to do it psychologically to remove the old, because that is why women still continue to be raped. Women continue to be oppressed by other women because people are socialized to oppress others. There's a quotation I have for the House today, quoted by Dr. Tibani, says, "You are a product of God's engineering capacity. You are to excel because you exceeded your yesterday. Remember, it's not about exceeding others or being better than others, but it is about exceeding yourself, and there is nothing noble in being superior to others, but true nobility is being superior to your previous self." So it is up to you as an oppressor to re-educate yourself. That is why you'll have a Steve Hofmeyer who will sing the stem from South Africa, and nobody says anything about it because they see it correct. It is wrong when we build a nation. It is wrong when we build a nation that people must converge. They must move from oppression to unite, and those that are oppressed must unite. They must converge. All of us were hurt. But there has never been a stage when people were expressing themselves like freedom of speech, democratic right. Today, people say we have a freedom of speech, but they never spoke about our oppression. Where were they when we were oppressed? But today, they have a freedom of speech, which is the ANC that has given them the freedom of speech. So the issue of patriarchy, you can be in black search, but at the same time, you must liberate other women. It's not about you. Liberation is not about individuals. It's about a group of people that has to move for transformation to a certain direction. So patriarchy, I will generalize. Patriarchy, it's something that is embedded in our culture, it is embedded in our education, it is embedded in everything that we do, and we see it normal. And we see nothing wrong about it. One of the examples is when architecture around, you take this building for instance, the architecture that did this building were masculine in their character. It was a male person who did the designs. You walk around, you slipped. And you can even break your leg because your shoes can't stick to the tile. It's as simple as that. But if we want to liberate women and we say that women must be part and parcel of parliament, it means that we must also change our flaws. We walk around here, we break our heels because the paving there, you can't walk on that paving. So if we say quality liberation, it means that even the people that were not planned in that particular building to be part of the building, they must be accommodated. I'm not talking about farms. I'm talking about our liberation. You must liberate your woman first. Racism and sexism are one and the same thing. It's oppression. Oppression, it doesn't matter that it comes from whatever angle. Whoever oppresses people, I'm not talking about animals, I'm talking about people oppressing people. And that is the subject of the matter at this point in time. That we have people oppressing others and we don't say anything about it. Oppression is oppression. It doesn't matter in whatever form that it comes in. So non-sexism will always be on your neck. Non-sexism, we will talk about it. We will fight for our rights. We will ensure that, Minister, people in transport, for an example, a woman drives a train, and that woman has fought for 8 hours a day, and that woman's shift can be reshifted to 9 to 5 so that that woman bonds with her child, takes the child to school, and that woman at 5 is able to go home and cook for the kids. But you find that women are given a shift that starts at 3 a.m. and they are raped at 3. But we always say, no, women have to be liberated and all that, but we don't give those that are managers never give quality liberation for these women.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Your time has expired. Sicela ilungu elibekekileyo uMachoba. Honorable Machoba, take the step.
Honorable Chair, Honorable Minister, Honorable Deputy Minister, Honorable Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee, Honorable members, women of South Africa. Though nothing can bring back the honor, the hour of splendor in the grass of glory in the flower, we will grieve, not rather find strength, what remains behind. My deepest sympathy to family, friends, and relatives of former NCPO Chief Whip Comrade Nosipho Ndwanambi. In a society such as ours, where patriarchy is so deeply entrenched, affecting the adversely the everyday lives of so many women, including women in the law, the strategic value of women's participating in position of power and authority should not be underestimated, because even the mere symbolism of their presence could bring enormous transformation and respect for women in society at large. As we celebrate 20 years of democracy in South Africa, it seems a perfect opportunity to not only reflect on the achievements of women in justice, but to celebrate them and acknowledge the Justice Department as an organ of the government that upholds and protects the Constitution. We striving for a transformed and accessible justice system which protects social justice and the fundamental human. Prior to 1994, judges were appointed by the state president under Section 10 of the Supreme Court, Act 2. The years later, appointments came to be recommended by the Chief of Justice. Knowledge of these processes, including their selection of candidates, belonged only to the inner circle. Women of South Africa, this is a reflection of where we come from. April 27, 1994, the day South Africa's first democratic election, the following race and gender balance of 165 judges, 160 were white men, 3 were black men, and 2 were white women. At that stage, there was no black woman judge in South Africa. Today is an open constitution democracy based on the values of equality, freedom, human dignity, and fundamental human rights. We have 100 black men, 49 black women, 71 white men, and 21 white women serving our nation as judges. This means that we are bringing the gap to reflecting the racial and gender composition of South Africa. Required by our constitution, the need for women in judiciary and leadership positions cannot be exaggerated. Although we have come a long way, we must agree it is enough. The challenges of processing justice and ensuring due to sensitivity to gender-related offenses, abuse, rape, and domestic violence remains as a challenge. Despite progress in access to justice, we acknowledge. UThixo ke waqumba umuntu omnye ukuze akhokhele amaSirayeli. Awasekwilizwe lobusi wanika uMoses intonga aze zange anike noba ngubani na. Kunjalo ke namhlanje iANC ibusisiwe nguNkulunkulu ukuze ngo1994 ikhokhele abantu belizwe. Yiloo nto kwi-courts justice kuzo zonke i-department yafaka amakhosikazi ukuze nawo abe yinxalenye yokunyusa umgangatho welizwe lethu lityebe kangaka. Enkosi Nxamalala, nathi namhlanje singamakhosikazi sinesidima, siyavakala xa sithetha ngenxa yalo government. Kungenxa yalo Moses uyi-African National Congress. Uno-government osezingqondweni, uneliso lokujonga, awulali kusa ungena unamaphupho ngabantu base-South Africa. Siyabulela, sinesicelo kwakhona kube ngathi ayafakwa amakhosikazi. Akwanele kanjalo nathi sithembisa ukuba sakuba ngamakhosikazi anezimilo nakwazi ukuziphatha kuzo zonke i-department esibekwe kuzo. Kwaye sakubonakalisa intembeko singabandakanyeki kwizinto ezakuba lihlazo kulo rhulumente wephupha labantu kususela ngonyaka ka-2012 Comrade Low, wena mntu ubona lo government ungekanzinto. I'm sorry because my papers are not right. So, sikhumbule omama Lilian Ngoyi namanye amakhosikazi asuvulela indlela emhlophe kusukela uqala ngo1956 sade sawonga ngenyanga yomama uAugust esithi yakufika sizive ukuba nathi siyathandwa. Uthi noba sowunesithukuthezi ubone kungena SMS ethi ngalenyanga yenu malibongwe uncume ukhumbule ngobutsha nangobuntombi bakho. Kuwona lo madoda sabulala abafazi awazisa ihoneymoon ngenjongo zokuzityebisa, nakulo asabulela abafazi ngeValentine's Day ngenxa yomona. Our justice must do something and make sure the law reform on bail sentencing, victim empowerment, capacity building, and extending access to courts to previously disadvantaged areas, and integrated responses. In conclusion, Minister, women in the presidency will create the necessary capacity to ensure a systematic approach in dealing with physical and psychological abuse, exclusion, and other forms of discrimination that impede the development and progress of women. Ndifuna ukuthi ke ugovernment we-ANC siyawubona wonke izinto ezibalulekileyo athe wazenza esajongile kule 20 years ukuthi after 20 years sekhona ezinye izinto asazawuzenza. Masincedisane ke ukuba siqhubele South Africa ibheke phambili, singagxeki sigxeke noba sesibona uba zikhona izinto ezenziwa zinhleyile ngulo government ka-African National Congress. Kulo madoda asahawulayo ahawula abafazi, ndifuna ukuthi zikhona i-psychology zokubanceda kuba amanye amadoda anida i-psychology kuba awakazazi apho akhoya kabinanhlonipho ebafazini. Ndibukeleke utata olapha ecankwam ohawula umfazi ebeme apha kule ndawo. Ndiqinisekile ke awukamkhululi umfazi wakho kwaphaya endlini usabophekile nguwe. Zama ke indlela yokuba ufunde indlela yokuba inkosikazi iphathwa njani. Ungaphathi kakuhle le yakho kanye kuphela ipha endlini. Uyazi uba inkosikazi ifana nenye. Afana amakhosikazi onke whether umhlophe okanye umnyama amakhosikazi ayafana. I thank you. Masinyusele masibhekise iSouth Africa phambili nawe tata nenkosikazi yakho uyincedisane nathi enkosi.
Thank you, honorable members. The Honorable Tarabella Machesi.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I just want to clear the air here. In the first place, the ANC is not the only party that brought liberation to South Africans. It can, that is half-truth. And as we all know, half-truths are lies. The people of South Africa resisted apartheid. And it needs to be acknowledged that in the face of the most horrendous repression, South Africans as workers, religious people, civic societies, in education everywhere resisted apartheid, and in many cases did so without regard to the liberation movement. I was born in 1970. I just want to give you my history. I know about the liberation movement. I know about the liberation movement. So that is not, at the time, I was oppressed and I knew nothing. I was never asked, do you have an ANC card to go and strike? I was never asked that. I fought for my liberation. I also fought as much as the ANC came in and also fought, but I also fought, but as an individual, not associated with the Liberation Party.
Honorable Member Tarabella. Okay. Honorable Member Tarabella Machesi. Honorable Member, can you take your seat there? No seat? Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Is the honorable member willing to take a question?
No.
Honorable Chair, it is refreshing to see that the minister is prepared to bring changes into the Ministry of Women in the presidency, because women deserve better. Women make up 51.3% of the South African population, and the recent elections held in May indicates that they were the majority of voters as compared to their male counterparts. That on its own is an indicator that women believe in this democracy, and that they still remain hopeful that their lives will improve for the better. While there's no doubt that life is better post-1994, many South African women are yet to experience a better life. The former minister, Lulu Kingwana, who was tasked with trying to rectify this situation, did little to assist. Indeed, a probe by the Public Service Commission found that her irregular appointments of officials in the ministry clearly had nothing to do with saving women in this country. The department buckled under poor management with a 77% vacancy rate and just meeting 10 out of 16 set targets. All this happened while the minister notched up passport stamps at an alarming rate. The department spent 130,000 on entertainment and only 79,000 on training. This department soon became a national embarrassment, not a vehicle entrusted to improve the lives of women. Minister Shabangu, this is what you have inherited, unfortunately, and I urge you not to make the same mistakes. Honorable members, addressing issues that are related to women takes more than just 16 days of activism. We must tackle the real problems facing women every single day of the year. This requires the department to fulfill its mandate and to focus on what matters, helping women get into the ladder of the economy. As Statistics South Africa 2013 noted, and I quote, "In general, the responsibility of household work and caring for children and the elderly lies with women more than it does with men. In contrast, there are more men than women in paid work." Therefore, Honorable Chair, poor thought-out political stunts such as gender equality and women empowerment bill must be scrapped once and for all. The bill distracted from the real issues, which was cannibalizing the constitutional mandate of the Commission for the Gender Equality, a Chapter 9 institution. Besides overriding the mandate of the CGE, this bill only duplicates provision in a host of other acts, including the Promotion of Equality and Prevention of Unfair Discrimination of 2000, Employment Equity Act of 1998, the Basic Condition of Empowerment Act of 1997, the Broad-Based Economic Empowerment Act of 2003, and the Human Rights Commission Act of 1994. At the time, the Green Paper produced in preparation of this bill called on the ministry to coordinate a comprehensive process for reviewing and assessing current legislation and policy. This did not happen. Honorable Minister, instead of introducing new legislation, there are a number of issues which need to be prioritized. We need a comprehensive audit of existing legislation to identify where the gaps are. We must know why crucial pieces of legislation are not sufficiently implemented and what can be done to ensure that their objectives are realized. We must ensure that women, girls, and sexual minorities are protected from violence. Empowerment means nothing if people are scared to walk in the streets. We need to address the scourge of teenage pregnancy. Teenage pregnancy traps so many girls and their children in permanent dependency and degrading poverty, often accompanied by sexual violence. In order for this department to even come close in achieving its mandate, we need to come up with intervention and find best practices that will help achieve targets, measure outcomes by doing follow-ups and recording data. We must tackle the real issues head-on. In conclusion,
Thank you, Honorable Member. Your time has expired.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Honorable P. Bengu.
Thank you, Chairperson. Honorable members, honorable guests, addressing a joint sitting of Parliament to commemorate the 10 years of democracy in South Africa on 10 May 2004, Tata Madiba said, and I quote, "Let us never be unmindful of terrible past from which we come, using that memory not as a means to keep up shackled to the past in a negative manner, but rather as a joyous reminder of how far we have come and how we achieve," close quote. Chairperson, today I'm talking on the topic of women and land. The mandate of the department has been defined as promotion, facilitation, coordination, and monitoring of the realization of the rights of women. It's not a service provider, Honorable Law, the EFF. The patriarchal system of law and land rights have deprived the women of independent access to land and control over the product of their labor. This must be addressed by ensuring that the women has the same rights as men in regard to all land-related issues and must be given special assistance to realize these rights. The Land Claims Court should be empowered to consider the claims of women who are or were excluded from land ownership and entitlement by law, custom, and practice. Abesifazane ezindaweni zasemakhaya basaqhubeka nokungabi nalo ilungelo lomhlaba, ikakhulukazi uma bengashadile. Uma wawushadile washonelwa umyeni wakho, awunalo ilungelo lokuya phakathi kwamadoda uma sekuyobekwa inxiwa. Kufuneka ube nomuntu wesilisa ozongumela kube nguye otshelwa yonke into nokhokhayo egameni lowesifazane. Abantu besifazane basecindezelekile ezindaweni zasemakhaya ngoba abakwazi ukuzimela ngaso sonke isikhathi, kumele bamelwe. Kwezinye izikhathi abanye besilisa uma owesifazane enikwa isikhundla sokuphatha bayahluleka ngisho nokufihla ukuthi bona abasoze baphathwa abantu besifazane. Siyakubonga ukushintshwa kwemithetho ngoba abaningi abantu besifazane baphethe izikhundla eziphezulu. Sibonge kakhulu umbutho wesizwe uKhongolose ngokulwela ilungelo lokulingana ngokwamathuba kubantu besifazane. Honorable members, this is a critical element of a national democratic revolution whose strategic objective is the creation of a united, non-racial, non-sexist, and democratic society. Redistributing reforms are fundamental to the cause of redressing the racial injustices and address the skewed distribution of land, wealth, and income. Many policy initiatives have dealt with the question of land. The ANC 1992 policy guideline, Ready to Govern, speaks to the redress of the past injustices, was identified as a fundamental point of departure to any future land policies to South Africa. Critical component of the policy was to strike a balance of issues of equitable distribution of land, development and maintaining of productive agricultural sector, and a vibrant rural economy. It was intended to ensure economic growth and improve the well-being of all South Africans. The Reconstruction and Development Program of 1995 identified land as the most basic need for the rural dwellers, further acknowledging of the effects of capital-intensive agricultural policies resulted in large-scale eviction of farm dwellers from their land. Even then, it was believed that land reform should form part of the comprehensive rural development program, must raise rural incomes and productivity, and must encourage the use of land for agricultural and other productive and residential purposes. The ANC's 52nd National Conference resolution in 2007 identified the rural development, land reform, and agrarian change as a critical pillar of South Africa's program of economic transformation. These issues are fundamental elements of a wider program restructuring, hence a need to ensure that land reform form part of a wider program of rural development. Some of the crucial proposals were the need to support smallholder farming in a manner that improves rural livelihoods, creation of a fully resourced, overarching authority to drive and coordinate an integrated program of rural development. Honorable Chairperson, the ANC envisage implementation of large-scale programs that will establish new smallholders and improve productivity of the existing small-scale and subsistence farmers in order to address the triple challenges of unemployment, poverty, and inequality, especially in the rural areas. The program of the ANC-led government of land reform is a constitutional imperative, and it addresses the imbalances and injustices in South African political economy, and it encompasses the restitution, redistribution, and tenure reform. There is a need to entrench agri transformation so that the redistribution of land reforms are combined by effective access to inputs, tools, equipment, and market. In addition, private infrastructure for communication, transport, as well as transport services such as extension, training, and skills development and marketing advice as crucial elements of the transformation process. Sustainable job creation programs will incorporate the provision of infrastructure and skills to enhance the productive capacity of these areas, as well as raise the standard of living of the people. These programs should focus on economic viable localities, but benefit all the people in rural areas, especially women. Rural women in South Africa during the colonial and apartheid era legally acquired land in their own right. They were also marginalized in rural governance structures such as district and by tribal authorities. Access to land for women is a very important resource for poverty alleviation because people depend on it for cultivation, food production, and their livelihoods. Unequal access to land remains one of the most important forms of inequality, which has dire consequences for women, both as social and political actors in society. Land reform, redistribution, and access are key areas that still need attention and gender mainstreaming in order to ensure that women benefit equally in South African land reform program. While the official land program aims to redress the past inequalities resulting from the systematic racial discrimination, the implementation of a gender equality approach requires a change in local structures, beliefs, and divisions of labor as they manifest themselves within the work of this department as well. Honorable Chairperson, in conclusion, the major issues here concern the advancement of women's rights in communal, family and household land, as well as the recognition of women's rights to participate on equal terms with the men and as individuals in land reform projects. Legislation and policy alone cannot guarantee equitable access to land for women because of the patriarchal nature of the South African society. Proper monitoring and evaluation systems with clear indicators, inclusive of gender disaggregated data, should be put in place to ensure that there is a gender equitable land reform process and employment equity practices. Reopening of land claims for restitution for a period of 5 years, commencing in 2014 this year, will be a bonus to women in South Africa. Therefore, I will encourage all women of this country, those who were removed forcefully in their land, even those whose husband has passed on, who were the owners of the land, to go and claim for their rightful land. As ANC said in the manifesto of 2014, that we will continue to improve the tenure security and administration of people living in communal areas with emphasis on women tenure security. Therefore, thank you. The ANC supports the budget.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Member Shabangu, the Minister.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. May I take this opportunity to thank members who supported our budget vote for today, whilst acknowledging that there might have been gaps and weaknesses where we come from. We also have to bear in mind this was a fairly new ministry, and therefore some of the pitfalls are part of that new approach which intended to address the issues. I think whatever happened in the past, there was no malice or intention of causing some of the issues raised. And I think where we stand today, we'll be learning from those weaknesses. I don't want to say it's mistakes, it's weaknesses which happened. And I think they will also help us to improve and move forward in a more constructive and better way. And thank you very much, Honorable Robinson, for the support for this for our budget vote. May I also say I agree with you. The Tutuzela centers or any other form of social centers which are supposed to address issues related to challenges faced by women are indeed a challenge. If we're going to say it's not true, it's a reality. Therefore, I think all of us, including yourselves as members of this committee, is to say, what is it that we are going to do differently in making sure that they get better, but also they reach out to more people or affected women in South Africa. That's our responsibility. It's not mine, it's ours. I think that's what we need to bear in mind, because sometimes our approach is about lamenting and think it's somebody's responsibility. It's our responsibility, all of us, especially in this committee. If we work together, we will be able to make a difference in ensuring that challenges faced by women at various levels are indeed attended to. So thank you for that support once more. I must say that, Honorable Lowe, I'm not surprised. I didn't expect you to support it. You were not here. What do you support what you were not here? You were never there. So it's not surprising. In fact, if I was you, I would have been neutral and kept quiet more than any other thing. That is why you want to bring issues of Marikane in a way that suits you. You must look at the picture holistically. You have to understand the environment holistically. No one rejoices about what happened in Marikane. It was a sad day for all of us, for South Africa, and we are South Africans. So you can't also isolate issues in a way that suits you. Some of the women who are widows today, if you go to those rural areas, they're being taken care of. Communities themselves are trying to find a way and integrate them within ensuring that they've got means of taking care of their children. I'll make an example. The widow of Michael Ngwe, as our Honorable Mandela was trying to say to you, you have Michael Ngwe, his wife or his widow, Nosihle Ngwe, is currently employed as a CLO for the Mvezo area. And he's earning 4,500. He does not need to go to Marikane or go to Joburg or Rustenburg to work. He's within the environment where she stays with the family. And that's what we need to advocate as a country. Be there with your family. She's able to take care of her children. That's what is very, very key. But also the plight of women overall. We must never, ever try and romanticize. We must be realistic. We are women. That is why Charlotte Macleke in 1955 led the struggles of women. That's why we have 1930, that's why we have 1956, where women themselves took upon themselves to make sure that they fight for the rights of women. And that's part of our struggle. It's not an event. It's not an event, it's a process. It's painful, it's hurting. That's what you must know. It's hurting to some of us, for those women who lost their husbands. Because we know it's not a theory for some of us. We are also widows. We know it. And we share in that pain of those women. So I'm saying to you, don't come and romanticize what you don't understand. Because there's a program, you are. You don't understand. I can see you don't understand. And may I also appeal to you, may I also appeal, honorable member, don't come here and make public statements because you've got a podium. Join the committee so that you can share and contribute towards change like all other members who are here. The challenge is that because you know that we're being watched all over, we're going to be on TV, that's why you want to stand here. Share in the pain, share in the transformation, share in the various issues, in finding solutions, in addressing women issues. So I thought it's important to remind you, but also, Honorable Carter, I would also say the same thing. I agree you might not want to refer to the past. You know, there's a tendency of saying, I want to show that I care. Let's not do public relations. Let's be honest to what we are doing in real. Because to say there's somebody there who's doing this and telling us about the maintenance costs, what is it that you're doing? And you must not also forget, you are a public representative. This parliament creates an opportunity for you to intervene. You can. It gives you that opportunity. So we must also know our responsibility as various individuals that, yes, we have overall challenges, but also at an individual level. We can be able to assist those who are unable to advance particular issues. So I want to appeal to all of us. There's a little we can do in our little corners, but also there's a lot we can do as a collective. And I think for us, that's very, very important to say, what is it that we do? I want to say, Honorable van der Merwe, I agree with you, Honorable Giselle. There's no money, but also you must bear in mind that we are part of the overall government. And we're fighting for resources. But I am confident where we are, if we are able to chat and explain our objectively, clearly, we might not get all, but we might have enough to help us to advance and steer this course of making sure that the interest of women is advanced, but it's also at the center of everything we do. I must say to you, I believe in economic empowerment of women as the core, as a fundamental, because if we can be able to ensure that women economically, they can sustain, take care of themselves, then it helps us to move towards making sure that some of the social ills we're facing will be reduced or eliminated, because it's more about empowerment. And you know, if you are empowered economically, even your self-esteem gets better. You are confident that you can take care of yourselves. So I hope as we deal with these issues in the committee, we will be able to agree and chat forward and chat the issues together in making sure that the women in South Africa are better. But we must also not underplay where we come from. We are better. We are better. I'm not sure if it wasn't of this struggle of ours. By the way, I'm not better because I'm a black woman. I'm also better because I'm a woman. Because even white women were not better in the past. So we are all better today. And if we are better, one of our responsibilities is to review as this ministry and this portfolio committee, what are the gaps? And what is it that it's there which we're not doing? And we've got to identify those issues for us to be able to move forward. And I agree, we've got to mainstream the work. You know, I don't think laws which exist or prevail currently, there was a deliberate attempt not to recognize certain issues which we find inside both the legislative work. So that's our responsibility to assist. It's not the ministry which is going to play an oversight. It includes yourselves. Don't think I'm going to run away. It's all of us who are going to run together in making sure that the lives of women get better. That's our responsibility. And we will be judged in this coming 5 years. What is it that we have done in taking a step further when it comes to women issues? So I believe strongly that we need to be cohesive. We need to find a common approach in making sure that there's a difference for our women. And dealing with the issues, for instance, of the various issues, we also have to understand part of our responsibility as monitoring, evaluating, and oversight. Some of the programs related to women, we're not going to find in this ministry or in your portfolio. They will be somewhere else. So we must also avoid tensions where we want to do what resides somewhere else. But what this portfolio does, it creates an opportunity for us to oversee, play an oversight role, to say those mechanisms which are meant to advance socially and economically do advance the interest of women. Is that happening? That's what we must do. I agree. We must not duplicate. We have a lot of laws. They might not be sufficient, but at least for now, there's sufficient work for us to move forward by identifying weaknesses and gaps where women issues are not being properly advanced. And I must say, Machesi, you know, you spoke so well. Why spoil it with what it's not relevant? No, man, Machesi, man. No, honorable member, man. Don't say things which spoils the good work, you know? So I'm pleading with you, don't say that. You don't say things which spoils good work. Because you see, when you talk about the history of the struggle in this country, you can't say it's half. You can't say ANC has half. It was never a half. If you read our history, yeah, no, you did say, Machesi. Man, maybe. You say it's half-truth. No, it's not half-truth. Let me remind you. No, it's not. Let me help you. So it's to show that you must have the context. You have the context. You know, when you go back, right from the past, and even the formation of the ANC, its leaders, credible leaders of this country who were oppressed, took upon themselves to say, enough, it's enough. Reverend Dube and the others, your Sol Plaatje, they pulled together. They could have ignored to say, we don't care, we are academics, we are educated, we are better off, we're taking care of our families. But they said, if I am better, the rest is not better, it means I'm also not better. Hence, they took it upon themselves to initiate. And over the years, the ANC has been in the forefront. That is why it's at the center. Let me also say, when O.R. Tambo, the late president of the ANC, moved out of South Africa, he mobilized not just for the little ANC, he mobilized for the South African society, the NGOs, Black Surge. The funding for Black Surge was mobilized, solicited by the ANC, because they never saw the struggle being very narrow. You see, the civil society in South Africa during the struggle, during apartheid, its funding was mobilized by the ANC. Your Norwegian countries, when they were supporting NGOs who were fighting apartheid, was mobilized by the ANC because it was not about the achievement only for the few members of the ANC. It was about South African society as a whole. So that's why you can't say it's half-truth. It's the whole truth. Let me also say,
Honorable Member, the Minister.
My apologies.
Honorable Members, order. Minister, unfortunately, your time is over, but I can see that this will be a very lively portfolio committee. You will even educate one another, influence one another.
Thank you, Honorable Chair.
Thank you. And indeed, we can see the intergenerational mix and the work that all of us have to do to ensure that we move together as a country to transform our society for the better. Honorable members, we are reminded that the Extended Public Committee debate on Vote 36 Tourism will take place in the Old Assembly Chamber at 14 hours. The Extended Public Committee debate on Vote 7 Public Works will take place in the Good Hope Chamber at 14 hours. And the Extended Public Committee debate on Vote 27 Communications will take place in Committee Room E249 at 14 hours. That concludes the debate and the business of this Extended Public Committee. The committee will now rise.